I'm Jason, and you're watching Tennessee Mountain Homestead. Today we're back out in the shop to get to work on my 1967 Sears Custom 6. Now, it's been a full 3 weeks since we worked on this thing last, and that's mainly because we've been waiting on parts. Some of them came from China, some from California, and some from Texas. Now, I'm gonna let my new partner, Chris, come and explain what happened with that. And if you guys are wondering, Chris is the new Tennessee Mountain Homestead project manager, reporter, and he comes from a background of used car sales, motivational speaking, and I'm letting him stay in the shack out by the creek. Oh, here he is now. Thanks, Jason. I'll take it from here. This is Chris Russo reporting live for Tennessee Mountain Homestead. Back on January 9th, Jason gave me the task of ordering all the parts for the steering on this project. I went exclusively through eBay and several different sellers. They were all shipped US POS. Now, almost immediately, some of the parts were lost in the mail, and I reached out to the seller. They were kind enough to reship them UPS. Other parts, not so much. As a matter of fact, we just got the parts a couple days ago, and if you come over here to the green screen, one of the packages left China.
China.
And landed in Bentonville, Illinois. Then it went to Smyrna, Tennessee. Then it went to Houston, Texas, all the way back over to Atlanta, Georgia, back on a full circle tour of the United States, setting the project back a full 3 weeks, causing copious amounts of anguish and frustration across the homestead. Now, back to you, Jason. Thanks, Chris. Great work. All right, guys, before we get started, I'm gonna give you a little overview of the parts I have here on the table. Now, the centerpiece of this steering is gonna be this rack and pinion. It's a latest Rage, and it's 8.5 inches from heim joint to heim joint. It's got a 2.5 inch overall throw, left to right or lock to lock. It's got a 5/8 36 spline input, and it's made from billet aluminum. It's a very nice piece. I've got a few U-joints, a couple of singles, and I've got this double U-joint. I've got this coupler that goes to the splines of the input on this rack and pinion, and it also happens to be a U-joint. I've got a couple of different 3/4 inch bearings, some machine bushings, some shaft collars, and some various other bearings and bushings that I've accumulated over the last few weeks. And I've got this DOM tubing. It's 3/4 of an inch outside diameter, and it's 1/8 wall, or 0.125 wall. This is gonna be my steering shaft. So let's go ahead and get the tractor picked up off the ground so we can work underneath it, and I'll see you in a minute. Here's an update on what I got so far. I've located the holes on the frame here, and they happen to be 3/8. So we're good there. Now, the next thing I've got to do is figure out how I'm gonna get the rack, because it actually goes on this side and faces that direction, the splines. Only, I've got a little slight problem here, is this protrusion on the back of the rack. I need to relieve that either on the frame, I need to make a hole for it, or I need to build a plate that is a spacer between this and the frame. I'm leaning on the plate because there's already a hole right here, and this is where the factory axle used to articulate. And that hole will eclipse into the new hole I make. So I'm gonna go with a piece of 1/4 inch. I'll cut a square out, and then I'll drill a hole in it for that. And then I need to cut holes for this shaft to fit through these other 2 plates here. Now these are the 2 pieces of 3/16 plate that I fabricated in here to hold the suspension in. So right now, they're just smooth. I've got to figure out where to come in from this side with a hole saw and drill through both of these plates. Once those holes are there and I have my spacer, I'll be able to get this bolted in, and then I can start building off of this. The first thing I'm gonna do is work on the tie rods, getting those to fit on to the heim joints. After that, we'll work on the shaft up to the steering column. I ran myself into a little bit of a corner here. So I drilled through with a 2-inch hole saw in order to make room for this universal joint, which it fits, except right where that set screw is that holds it on to the shaft or the input for the rack and pinion is right center, right on this. So these holes really weren't perfect anyways, and they kind of leave a limited space. What I'm gonna do is I've cut out these 2 pieces of 3/16 steel, and they're gonna fit down in here just like this. Essentially, what I'm gonna do is box this out and then cut the center out. So that way, there's no obstructions for the steering shaft all the way through. I've got the steering rack bolted back in place, and the next thing I'm gonna do is connect the tie rods to the spindles. So it's time to connect the tie rods to the steering rack, which the steering rack uses these 5/16 heim joints. And I'm gonna go ahead and use the stock tie rod that came on the ATV. Now, partly because they're pretty beefy, they're pretty stout. Also because they're tapered, the rod ends on these studs, and they correspond with the taper that's in these spindles. So I left the left hand thread on this side so that I could get these metric bolts for the right and their right hand thread. That was a lot easier to get than a left hand thread bolt. Now, what I'm gonna do, or what my plan is, to mate the heim joint to the bolt, what I've got to do is grind off the finish on here, obviously, but I'm gonna take a couple of pieces of flat, like a pair of forks or a clevis, and I'm gonna weld it to the end of this bolt, and it's gonna hang off the edge like this, and it's gonna fork over top of the heim joint, and then there'll be a 5/16 bolt through that. That'll also give me a pivot point, so that as the suspension articulates up and down, this will pivot with it on that connection. So it'll make a lot more sense when I'm done, but I'm gonna go ahead and get started fabricating out those pieces that are gonna bolt through right now. This here is the moment I've been waiting for all day long. So, check out what I've got, guys. I've measured off the chassis, and I've got the wheels looking dead ahead. So, that hub is straight with the chassis, that hub is straight with the chassis. I just measured this. I've got the steering rack centered, so there's an equal amount of the steering shaft sticking out of both sides of the body of that rack. I've got my tie rods in place, and I have adjustability on both sides. It's a left and right hand thread, so all you gotta do is turn the body of this and it'll push in or out on the wheels. So I do have adjustability. The only thing left to do is tack weld this. If you come in here, I'll show you what I'm talking about. See, this here is still loose in there. The idea is to weld that bolt and that nut to these pieces of steel that I cut earlier. Once that's welded, it'll be a solid connection. I'm a little nervous, but it's not the end of the world. If something isn't right after that or it doesn't work, I can just make more of those. So I'm not really tearing anything up or messing anything up. So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and tack these into place, and then I want to turn my rack back and forth, left and right, to see if I have full articulation of the steering, if it can go all the way lock to lock, as far as it could when it was in the ATV. I'm excited. Now, I've had a little bit of anxiety all day, a little razzle dazzle, you know, nothing crazy, but I was concerned I wasn't gonna be able to pull this off. However, couldn't be better. Check this out. It turns all the way, and that's the factory steering lock right there. See where it hits? That's a steering stop. And I've got that on both sides. So we are even. And you've got clearance. It's smooth. I do have to take this thing back apart, and I can also adjust it, guys. Like I said, I've got adjustment in this. I can toe in and toe out right there. So we're gonna take a break right now, but the next thing to do is going to be mocking up the shaft that connects to the steering wheel. That's gonna be interesting because I've never done this before, but we're gonna go into this together, togetherness. You guys are gonna come along, we're gonna hold hands, we're gonna get nice and cozy, and we're gonna figure this thing out. See you in a minute. All right, we're back. It's been a couple hours later. We got this thing back down on 4 wheels. As you can see, the tires are inflated now. Stefan did a good job of putting the inner tubes in those. Now, I can play with it at ride height and I don't have to worry about the tires being completely flat. So, if you come over here, what I've been doing for the last few minutes is I've got this double U-joint, and I think that this is the one I'm gonna end up having to use. You know, a double U-joint, it's got a 70-degree working angle. And this is a smooth bore, 3/4 inch round. And what I've done is I've drilled, and I'm working on tapping right now the holes in this so that I can crank these bolts in and I can clamp on the 3/4 inch shaft that's gonna go in there, and I can get it where I want it before, you know, I make any decisions or have to hard weld it, whatever. So that's what I'm doing now. We're gonna get the steering shaft and all that stuff mocked up. Stay tuned.
Boy,
has been a night, but I think there's a light at the end of this tunnel. So check this out. I've got everything hooked up. I've just got these set screws holding it from slipping, but these shafts are all the way seated in the joints. You see my double joint here. And then if you can see up in here, this joint. So check this out. If I turn the shaft, I need to support this shaft still. So we're coming up with something we're gonna do with bearings on this shaft to hold it straight. Because if I hold this with my right hand kind of straight or my left, and watch what happens. I can turn this, the joint flexes, everything's happy. That's all the way the one way, that was all the way right. That's all the way left. So it's gonna work, but this joint needs to be supported. So next thing, come on over here to the other side, I'll show you. This is what we got up here. We got this pillow block bearing. It's a misalignment bearing. And then up here in the dash, I've just got a standard oil light bushing. And I'll show you later, but what I've done, the factory has a similar bushing, or had a similar bushing here. There was a pipe that used to sleeve the steering rod that went down. And there's a set screw on the back here in the dash, but that set screw was seized up and I stripped it out. It was Allen, so I re-drilled it and I re-tapped it, and now there's a 1/4 inch bolt holding that oil light bearing, just holding it snug so it can't rotate. And I dimpled the outside of the bearing with a drill bit, so it can't rotate, it can't come up and down. That's what's gonna be here. Obviously, this pillow block bearing is staying, and that's what I got. Otherwise, y'all, it has, like I said, it's been a long day. We made a lot of progress. I mean, I went from thinking it might not even happen to it's almost done. So with that, we're gonna call it a night, and I'll see you tomorrow in the morning. What's up, guys? It's the next morning. First thing I'm gonna do is get started with this bearing support under here. As I was saying yesterday, I'm gonna use this old Ross steering box tube from an old John Deere 200 series. And I've got some 3/4 inch bearings that kind of fit inside of it. And these are front wheel bearings for the John Deere 111. I got some new ones before we put the bigger tires on the 111. Anyway, come on over here. I'll show you what Stefan's got going on. Where's that plate? So we've got a piece of 1/4 inch plate right here, and Stefan's gonna use a 3-inch hole saw, and he's gonna cut a circle out of it, and that's going to be to mount my steering wheel on. So the plan is to cut that circle, we'll open up the center to 3/4, and then over here, as you can see, I've got my steering shaft running wild right here, because I need to figure out exact depth and everything. But once the bearing support's in, and once it's all fixed, and we know how much is gonna stick out here, we'll slide that piece that he's cutting out over top of this, get our height here, and then we'll be able to weld it on there and cut the rest off. Let's get started.
Gathering
I've got some pieces made up of 1/8 inch by 3/4 inch bar, and I've beveled the ends down so that I can weld them in. But the idea is to put them right over the bearing like this, and then I'll weld it to the frame. And I've got 4 of them. So on both ends, on this end it'll be like this, and on this end it'll be like this. I'm super excited about this. I just tack welded it in to make sure it was gonna work, but check this out. Come on over here, check this out. So I got a pair of vice grips on the steering shaft, and it only takes a half a turn either way to go lock, or one full 360 to go lock to lock. The only thing it could probably use, which I'll end up doing eventually, is adding a support right here off of the frame or something. But I gotta build my belt system first. It doesn't really need it, but I can see a little bit of movement. Otherwise, it's good to go. I've got the piece the steering wheel is going to bolt to. This is the piece that Stefan fabricated. It's 1/4 inch plate. He cut out with a hole saw. Then he drilled a 3/4 hole in the center. We beveled it down because that's where I'm going to weld it to the steering shaft. Now, we took the steering wheel off of Stefan's wheel horse temporarily, just so we could get a gauge as to when this thing's going to be sitting straight. So the plan is to put that right down on there like that. And line up the holes. And I've already pushed this thing back and forth on the garage in here, and it tracks pretty straight. I know it's not going to be perfect, but it'll be close enough for whatever steering wheel I get. So the next thing we're going to do is tack that on, and then we're going to go from there. We have steering. Check this out. Lock to lock. She tracks nice and straight. Of course, I need to fine tune that when I do the alignment. We want a little bit of toe in, but it's great. It's only like a half a rotation from center to turn it all the way one way. Really, it's really responsive, and I love it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. So there is some work left to do on this. I've definitely got to put a support down here on this part of the shaft because there's too much sticking out unsupported, and between this bearing and the dashboard, it can move. Like you can see that. I can move the joint even. So gotta support that. I gotta blow this thing back apart, and I need to grind down the clevises I made on the tie rod ends, weld the other side. I need to weld those up good. and grind them down. I'm gonna take the suspension and everything back off of this, and I'm gonna clean up the entire front end under here. All the spot welds that I haven't welded fully. I'm gonna clean all the welds, round everything out, give it a good finished look, make it symmetrical on both sides. And then that'll be it for the suspension and steering, guys. This thing is moving right along. The next thing I need to do is get a seat fitted to this thing and start feeling out how my footboards are gonna go and my tree kickers and all that, because I need to be able to sit on it, hold the wheel, and have my feet in a comfortable position. Then I can decide where the clutch, the brake, and the gas are gonna go. And then we'll build the clutch system after that. That's like, the clutch system should be super simple. I've already done a couple of different kinds of those. It's gonna be modeled after the John Deere clutch system or the Wheel Horse. Same difference. But anyway, if you guys are new to the channel, please like, comment, and subscribe. Once again, I'm Jason.
I'm Stephen.
This is Tennessee Mountain Homestead, and we'll see you on the next one.